this took me like 30 years to figure out, and I figured it out on this tour. So there's this old idea, you know, that you have to rescue your father from the belly of the whale, right? From some monster that's deep in the abyss. You see that in Pinocchio, for example, but it's a very common idea. And I figured out why that is, I think. The fact that you have to produce hierarchies to solve those problems never goes away. The fact that the hierarchies dispossess never goes away. But the details shift all the time. And so the whole reason that you need the political discussion is to take a look at the particulars of the hierarchies and the particulars of the dispossession and say, okay, well, now we need to shim it up here, and now we need to shim it up here, and now we need to adjust this, and now we need to adjust this, because you can't come up with a final solution to those problems. I think that's partly why you have consciousness itself. So that's one of the reasons that's one of the reasons for developing a vision and for fleshing yourself out philosophically, because you want to aim at the highest goal that you can manage. Okay, so you do that, and so that as you take on a broader and broader range of challenges and you push yourself harder, then more and more of what you could be turns on, and that's equivalent to transforming yourself into the ancestral father, because you're like the, what would you call it? You're the consequence of all these living beings that have come before you. And that's all part of your biological potentiality. And then if you can push yourself, then all of that clicks on, and that turns you into who you could be. That's the re-representation of that positive ancestral father. So that's why you rescue your father from the belly of the beast. Yeah, it's pretty damn good.
You know, it's ridiculous, man.
It
doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense.
That's complete bloody nonsense, because as far as I'm concerned, and I really believe this, that would turn you on maximally. And so that's the idea of rescuing your father, because imagine that you're like the potential composite of all the ancestral wisdom that's locked inside of you biologically. But that's not going to come out at all unless you stress yourself, unless you challenge yourself. And the bigger the challenge you take on, the more that's going to turn on.
Dude, where's the proof? Where's the proof? Show me.
I'm doing.
Once you started getting into psychedelics, big O difference.
You kind of have to be psychopathic in order just to brush that off. You know, it's like, well, 100 people think I'm wrong. There's nothing to.
That's the first thing I thought. I'm like, oh my God, everyone's going to think this is April Fool's.
You could be right, but look, I think one of the reasons that...
It's really simple, man. It's like... The thing that gets me is there's so many fuck-ups.
But you're the potential solution to that. And so you accept that as a responsibility. So that's part of taking on a load. That's part of bearing a cross. You could look at it that way. The cross is sort of a symbol of the place of maximal suffering. Okay, so you accept that as a challenge, not as something that you're victimized by. Maybe you accept that as the price of being. Okay, so that's one responsibility. You're responsible for addressing the suffering in the world. So that could give you some meaning, seems to me. And then the next thing is, there's a story, of course, that Christ met the devil in the desert. And so that's the encounter with malevolence. So that would be the other thing, because the two major problems that people